Today I'll be talking about the game Olympica from Metagaming. It's a microgame 7 from 1978. It's about a base on Mars that the UN forces are trying to basically capture their computer system. So it's like I said, it's a micro game. So to give you a sense of scale, it's like 6.5 inches by 4, and it includes counters and a map. It's small, but it's well done. It doesn't have. It's all black and white, but it's got some interesting art in there, and the cover's nice. So a little bit of the theme from the back cover. The Webbies want your mind. Olympica simulates the UN Mars raid to capture the web mine generator from a heavily defended area near Nix Olympica's massive caldera. The Webby revolutionaries are deep in their tunnel complexes surrounded by strong pointed infantry. The raiders will use infantry, laser tanks, lifters, and the tunnel-busting bore drill. If they fail, man's future may fall to the telepathic religion machine web mind of Mars. So that's the theme. Interesting science fiction theme. As far as the components, there's a map which is it's one color with black and gray on it, but it serves its purpose. And actually, with the white and blue counters, they kind of look nice against the background, and it has everything you need as far as the combat results table and game tracker on the board. And on the map, so different features there's clear land, and then these are rises. You're basically going up in elevation. And then these are cliffs. So those are the three main things. And then there's this area where the web mine generator is in this area. So that's the features of the map. And there's several counters. There's the UN forces, which are the white. And then there's the web forces, which are in the blue, and then also a game term marker. So there's a good number of markers, as I showed. And then the different types of markers then are, for the UN forces, there's the heavy infantry, there's the light infantry, and these have the number up here shows the range. This is their attack strength and their movement amount. This is a laser tank, and again it's range, attack strength, and movement amount. The bore is basically a drill, and if it's in parentheses, it shows that it's just defensive strength, shows there. And same for the lifter. So the bore drills into tunnels, which the webs can have, and the lifter basically lifts the UN forces around and drops them off at different locations. And it has a defensive strength of 10. And the dust. So when on the combat results table, when one of the effects is that there can be dust that is around the unit that you try to hit, and that means it's electromagnetic dust that pops up from our surface that basically decreases their abilities. So it halves their attack strengths. And for the webs, they have one unit with a range of 2, attack strength of 8, and movement of 3. And I might mention too, the UN forces are affected by how they're slowed down by rises in cliffs, but the webs aren't. This is the web mine generator, which they're trying to protect. These are strong points, which are kind of reinforced areas. This is a mouth to a tunnel. These are the tunnels that the mouths connect. These are dummy counters that you can use for hiding forces, and this is the game turn marker. And there's no dice included in with this, since it's kind of a capsule kind of game. So I'll step through the rules here. It's got a lot of good theme to start out. Kind of sets up the story. Counters, which we'll talk about. It's got 3 different scenarios: introductory, an advanced scenario, which the webs are kind of, you can't see what's going on there, but then there's also a short advanced scenario, which you don't hide where the web counters are, so that one works well for doing solitaire, and that's the one I'm going to do. Basically, they vary by the amount of forces on each side and the victory conditions. So set up, you go by the scenarios, what web forces and UN forces you have, and I'll show that when I do the setup for play. The game turn sequence then is the web player goes first. They do what's called a compulsion phase, where they can move any one UN unit up to 3 hexes. They do a tunnel phase, where they can place tunnel units. Then reinforcements can come in the edge of the board. So part of the deal is that when you lose web components, up to 4 can come back in the board the next turn. So it's up to the rate of how well the UN player can get rid of them. The web player moves and does close assaults, and then there's ranged combat, and then there's dust, which is when a unit is hit and dust is kicked up. It's electromagnetic. They say the Martian soil is electromagnetic, so it affects the unit that's around it, and it decreases their attack by half, their attack strength. So you remove the dust. Then the UN player goes. They drop, which you can basically place three units on the board in different locations. Movement phase, and then they do also close assaults, which I'll talk about. Ranged combat, you take off their dust markers, and then their light infantry can do a second movement phase and also do close attacks again, and then you advance the game turn. So that's how it goes. So during movement, so first of all, there's no stacking, so the units are individual there, and the kind of describing movement here. So each unit's got a movement allowance, for instance 3 or 2. And the UN forces, so you just move that number of hexes or less. The UN forces, when they hit so there's the inclines, which are the lines, and the cliffs. They have to stop when they get to an incline or a cliff. But the web the inclines or cliffs don't impede the web, so that gives them some advantage. And they can pass through friendly units, but if they go on to a unfriendly unit, they have to do a close assault. So that's basically how movement works. And the exception is the lifters can actually move 25, and they can move, pick up like 3 units, and then drop them during the length of their 25 movement. So they're unique that way. And then also, as far as terrain, so obviously there's tunnels, and you can go over the tunnels or in the tunnels, obviously. It's self-explanatory. If a unit goes on a cliff hex, which these are, there's a chance of an avalanche, and you have to roll 1d6. If you get a 6, there's an avalanche, and you lose your unit. So the way ranged combat works is, this is on the board as well, the combat results table. You basically see what the range of the unit is, and if the opposing unit is in that range, like 2 for instance, then you look at the difference. You just compare the attack strengths, like a 6 versus an 8 for instance, and that difference, you go with that ratio of 1 to 1 or 1 to 2, and then you can consult this table, which is on the board as well. And the results are AE, attacker eliminated; DE, defender eliminated; AR2, the attacking unit is retreated 2 steps; DR, defender unit is retreated 2 steps; dust kicks up; or EX, which is exchange, which means both of them are removed from the board. And there are exceptions. For instance, if a laser tank is attacking an infantry, heavy or light infantry, it can't be lost in an exchange, and it also can't retreat if that happens. So that's how ranged works. Then there's also close combat, which basically the units are equal. So if you do close assault, there's no difference in attack strength. So that's an advantage for a lighter unit going against like a tank, for instance, because they both have the same attack. They're equivalent as far as where they're on the table. So that's interesting. And you take turns until one is eliminated. So tunnels are in the advanced rules. So basically, there's tunnel mouths, which are these, and then you can connect tunnels to them. And basically, as you'd expect, units can go in the tunnels. If you're in the tunnels, you can't do ranged combat. You can only do close combat. And also, you get your attack strength is doubled if you're at the entrance of the tunnel. And then to get into a tunnel, a bore can be used to drill into a tunnel and basically make another tunnel mouth. Yeah, I mentioned compulsion. That's where the web generator can push a unit back 3 using psychic power. Talked about avalanches. And generally the scenarios, I mentioned basically how the rules work. And then, like I said, you get reinforcements that come in the edge for the webs. And the goal of the scenarios generally is to have a UN unit on top of the web at the end of their turn, and that means that they have disabled the web generator. And in one scenario, you actually have to pick up the web generator on a lifter and leave the planet. So that's basically the rules. I mean, there's a lot of good examples in here, but that's the rules. And the terrain doesn't, other than the web mouth entrance, the terrain doesn't have an effect on combat. And also, if a lifter or bore gets pushed, like using compulsion, if it gets pushed into an incline, it's destroyed. That's another interesting. So that's the rules. Like I said, there's good examples in here, but that's how it works. And then you advance and you do 6, 8 turns depending on your scenario you're doing. And then, like I said, it didn't come with a 6-sided dice, but actually I'm using a 6-sided dice that comes in the little Metagaming little box game, so I can use that. So then as far as setting up, the scenario I'm doing is a short advanced scenario, and it goes 6 game turns. It uses the advanced features. So the web forces are set up. The web generator goes within this 5 diameter, kind of macro hex here. It goes somewhere and put in there, and then you have 4 strongholds that you put where you want, and then you set up tunnel mouths at these defined locations. I have units on the tunnel mouths, and then you have 17 infantry, which are these units. I've scattered them around the web generator, and some in the tunnel mouths. And that's where you set up the web forces. And then for the UN forces, you can drop them during the play, or you can just drop them all initially. And I just dropped them all initially, so they're all set up here. And they're set up in like groups of 3 because they're dropped in groups of 3. But basically, I decided to kind of go in from the side here. But you can set them up wherever you want. So the UN forces then have, it's also the same as the advanced scenario. So it's got 6 laser tanks. It's got a bore and armored drill. It's got 4 light infantry, which are these. It's got 19 heavy infantry, which are these. And the lifters, which are these. So that's the setup, and now I'll get into gameplay. So I'm at game turn 3 here, and I'll walk through a turn and kind of see how it goes. So the turn sequence, first the web players go, which are the blue ones. And first is the compulsion phase, where the web generator can basically move one of the other units 3 spots, 3 hexes. And they'll choose to move back this laser unit. Then the tunnel phase, so place tunnels. There's no more, I've already placed the tunnels I'm going to place. So basically, I have a tunnel mouth here and here, and a deep tunnel here and here, and also a tunnel mouth under these 2 units, and then a deep tunnel, below those. Reinforcement phase, so you can enter up to 4 previously eliminated web infantry units, and the map edge alternates each turn. The turn before, I had the units come from down here, so now there'll be some coming up here, and I have 3 that have been destroyed, so they'll be moving in, and these can each move 3. So it's interesting so basically it's the rate at which the UN can destroy them, because the webs are going to keep having these reinforcements come in. So. Movement phase and do close assaults. So close assaults are different than range in that both parties are equal, so it's good to, if they can get on top of a unit that's higher power, that'd be good. These will stay around the web, these guys will stay in the tunnel. This one will move up for a close assault. And for that you do the 4-1-4-1, so the defender goes, and it's a DR2 which would be pushed back. So the defender goes first, and it applies the result to the attackers, so that means the attacker goes back too. So that's the movement they'll do. So that's close combat, and then ranged combat. So if there's some within 2, they can fire. So this one is in the tunnel mouth, and that means that he gets a combat strength increase of 2 for attacking and defending, and he'll be attacking him. So the ratio is 2 to 1. He gets a 1, so the attack retreats 2. The result is a AR2, which would mean that the attacker would be pushed back 2 spots, 2 hexes, but since there's no stacking allowed and he'd have to go back in the tunnel to go on a unit that's stacked, he can't retreat to, so he'll just stay where he is. Then this unit to that is 1 to 1. That's a dust, which means that Martian dust is kicked up, which has like a negative electromagnetic effect, which will reduce this combat effectiveness by half. So that's that phase. And then if the web markers had dust, that would be removed, but none of them do. Then we go into the UN play in turn, so drop phase. Make drops as available. I've already dropped all my units, so that's where they are. Movement, move units, resolve close assault. So with a lifter, I can pick up units, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to pick up this one. 6, 7, 8. And he'll land right here. He'll drop him there, and he'll drop him light infantry on a cliff to get close to those units, and then he'll land here. Now when something lands, when infantry's on a cliff, there's a chance of an avalanche. So I roll a 6. If it would have been a 6, there would have been an avalanche, and then the unit would have been eliminated. Okay, so that's one movement. And then here, so when the UN units move the incline, they have to stop. They're moving 3. These are laser tanks. I'll keep these kind of back. And I'll kind of keep these by the laser tanks too. And that's a drilling. He's gonna slowly work his way up to there because they can drill into the tunnels, and there's some guys in tunnels there. So the range of this is 6, so he's gonna shoot there. So that's 25, so basically 2 to 1. Defender goes back 2, so he pushes him back 2. He'll fire there. 2 to 1. Dust. He'll fire at the dust one. Because that's half now, so it's basically a 4 to 1. Defender eliminated. So that's the late. This laser can go 2. He'll fire at 2 to 1 at that one. So when a laser tank attacks infantry, they can ignore the retreat. And also the EX, which is both units losing. So now I'll do the individual units. He's in a tunnel mouth, so he has some advantage. So it's basically a 1 to 2. Dust. So. He'll do 1 to 1. Dust. And so it's 2 to 1 since he's affected by a dust. Two to 1. Attacker retreats too, so he gets pushed back. He'll attack him 1 to 1. EX, which means they both get destroyed. They're out of range. He's at range there, so he can make an attack. 1 to 1. Dust. And that's all the ranged attacks. Dust removal, so any dust on UN units can be removed. So the dust is dissipated. That's the only one that had a dust on it. Second movement phase, so now the light infantry can move again and do close assaults. That's their advantage. He'll move towards him, but since it's a cliff again, he can only move 1 because he has to stop when he gets there and he has to do an avalanche. No, there's no avalanche. Is there any more light infantry? No, no more light infantry. So that's the conclusion of that turn. So that's Olympica, a micro game from Metagaming. It's micro game 7. It's Olympica, the UN raid on Mars 2206. There's a lot of good things about it. It's got a lot of good. It's a neat science fiction story. It's got a lot of good theme to support it in a small package. The whole concept of the webs and their compulsion ability of pushing units back and what the web generator is very interesting. The whole idea of the UN coming in the base, it's interesting. For a microgame, I'm very, very happy with it. It's got a lot of neat tactical things you can do as far as movement, and you got dust kicking up on the planet. The UN's trying to get this generator, but you have reinforcements coming in from the web, and they have different movement capability versus the UN forces. You got tunnels that you can put around. You can bore into tunnels. You can hide in tunnels. You can use them to get better tactical conditions. It's got a neat combat results table because you can kick up dust. You can mutually destroy each other. And it's very simply just to roll one dice and you'll get the ratios. It's very simple, which is consistent, with it being a micro game. So I'm glad they didn't go overboard here. This is really nice. So there's a lot of neat tactical things you can do. It's a lot of fair amount of replayability. It's got 3 scenarios, and the one I did, the short advanced one, plays good solitaire because you can basically change your frame of reference and do both sides. The other ones you have to kind of hide the units, but in that one you can see what's going on, so you can do the solitaire with like I said, changing frame of reference. It's a unique game. I mean, the downside obviously is, the components look nice, but I wish they were like. You have to cut out the counters, which is kind of strange, but it's a product of its time. Once you get all the counters going there, it looks fine. It looks well against the kind of, reasonably nice paper board here. So, what I can give her score is limited by, the components basically, but I really like the tactics. So I'll give it a good 6. Thanks.